Welcome to Beyond the Ridge, Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center's web series, bringing you interesting stories of race, religion, medicine, and war from the 19th century and beyond. My name is Libby Roda, and I'm one of the summer interns here at Seminary Ridge. Today I'm going to be talking about the life of Albert Cashier, one of the hundreds of female soldiers who had secretly enlisted as men in the Civil War. However, Cashier's story is unique among these women due to his choice of never once choosing to present as a woman both before the war and after, as far as historians know. While Cashier wasn't present here at Gettysburg, several of Buford's regiments were here from Illinois. We can see several of their memorials in the background. Albert Cashier himself was born in Ireland in 1844 by the name of Jennie Hodgers and came to the United States already accustomed to a more traditionally masculine lifestyle to do his line of work. He had worked in a shoe factory at his uncle's and was used to more of that kind of lifestyle. Very little is known about Cashier's early life due to lack of documentation and a personal refusal on Cashier's part for discussing his life prior to the war. More was found out about his life later in his final years, though with him suffering from dementia at his time of confession, the details are slightly hazy and a little bit choppy, so it's hard to say for sure. Albert Cashier came from the type of farming, working class background that was typical for women enlisting in war, which made him a prime candidate for the military. He worked physically laborious jobs such as farmer and a factory worker, so Cashier claimed that donning men's attire was simply more convenient and allowed for freer movement when performing physically demanding tasks. This was not necessarily uncommon for women working in farms or in factories. They had kind of strayed away from the traditional upper class, middle class gender roles that Victorian society was used to due to necessity for convenience in the workplace. As for his immigration to the United States, it's likely that he stowed away on a ship from a very early age, which would explain his lack of documentation. When the war started and Cashier decided to enlist, that's when the details of his life became certain. In 1862, he enlisted in the 95th Illinois Infantry, where he served from the time of his enlistment until the entire regiment was mustered out in 1865, serving his full 3-year enlistment. His identity was never discovered while he was in the war, though he certainly had some close run-ins, as many other people did. He's described as being short in stature, around 5 feet tall, with small hands and feet as well. This drew some suspicion, but it was also quite common for young boys to secretly enlist and pose as older men, so it's likely that he kind of overcame the suspicion, as people would have assumed that was what he was really doing. He also had a run-in with some chronic illness during his time in the Army and only very narrowly avoided having a physical exam done by some doctors. He had a digestive issue that followed him for the rest of his life, and he had to dodge a lot of physical exams during his time in battle. Nevertheless, he was greatly respected by his fellow soldiers during his time in the regiment. Cashier went through no shortage of stops to make sure his cover wasn't blown as well. He often refused to have bunkmates. He was hesitant with getting closer with his fellow soldiers. He was picky about his privacy, and he even led his fellow soldiers to believe that he had a girlfriend waiting for him back home, showing them a series of letters that were likely fabricated. Although he did make a lot of very good friends in the regiment. His fellow soldiers kind of saw him as kind of an awkward, quiet guy who just kept to himself. They garnered no suspicion at all whatsoever that Cashier was actually female. But as I mentioned previously, his story is unique because he chose to live as a man after the war and never revealed the truth willingly to anybody. In the years after the war, Cashier was seen as somewhat of a loner in his community, like he was by his fellow soldiers during the battles. He kept to himself and often took odd jobs here and there, and most people around him simply thought him to be a kind, albeit strange, old man. His identity was never discovered until 1910 when he got hit by a car and suffered a broken leg. Cashier turned to some neighbors that he was close with who happened to be a family of doctors and medical care workers. One of the daughters who was serving as his nurse when he was injured discovered the truth about his identity when she was treating him. But the people who were treating him agreed to never disclose this information to anybody due to their close personal relationship with him. For the time being, he was sent to a home to recover, soldiers and sailors nursing home, where he remained for quite some time, until he started to show signs of dementia in 1913. It was around then that his secret came out, and he was sent to a state hospital where this truth was discovered and he was forced to wear women's attire. And there also was revealed a scandal about his pension that he received. Since women were not allowed to enlist in war, but he had received a pension, there was some issues with that as well, because some people were saying that he was purposefully breaking the law. But after his identity was uncovered, his fellow former soldiers expressed genuine surprise and shock at this new information, especially because he never went back to living as a woman after the war. After his death, his fellow soldiers buried him in his Union uniform, and he had his chosen name engraved on his tombstone, buried with full military honors. But thanks for tuning in to another installment of Beyond the Ridge. Once again, my name is Libby Roda, and we hope to see you back on the Ridge very soon.